So item number 1, let's call the meeting of the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Subcommittee to order. Councillor Ingram has provided her regrets for this meeting. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none, we move on to delegations. Item 3, we don't have any scheduled. Item 4 is the report of the Manager of Environmental Services, and 4.1 is basement isolation subsidy program updates. And I see Mr. Bose there ready to let us know about 4.1. So go ahead.
Through the chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, just a little background. In 2002, when the city had those very severe floods, one of the resulting programs that came from that was a basement isolation subsidy program, which essentially meant that any residents' homes that were impacted by that flood event were able to apply for the subsidy rebates for disconnecting the weeping tile system from their sanitary lines, installing backflow valve preventers, that sort of thing. So we've had this program since 2002, and it hasn't really been updated in that time. So for example, the old general requirements stated that you had to have been impacted by the flood. So over time that, kind of changed in-house to say, no, if you're a homeowner in the city and you do have a cross connection with your sanitary, we still want you to disconnect because it's better for your property, it's better for our wastewater treatment plant, it's better for our infrastructure. So a lot of this is just kind of cleaning up that old, the old general requirements and bringing up the AODA standards for the forms. So that's also included as an attachment. But we also wanted to increase the amounts available for rebate to eligible homeowners, specifically the installation of a backwater valve, the disconnection of your weeping tile when that's done inside your basement in the foundation, and also disconnection from the weeping tile when that's done outside of your foundation in the front yard. And the reason for these increases is that these initial prices were set in 2002. So obviously over time, materials, trades, labor has gone up significantly. And also it creates more of an incentive for homeowners to take advantage of this subsidy program, which, as we say, is a proactive measure from the city to help combat our infiltration issue that we do have with our sanitary system. So yeah, that basically sums it up. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take any.
Does anyone have questions? Councillor Gaffney, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I guess my question is, do we know generally how many residences might be eligible for this, or is that something that would be difficult to ascertain?
Yeah, it would. Some data we could provide. So a home is only eligible for this subsidy once. So we do have records that we could go back to 2002, the start of the program, and at least confirm the homes that have had it done. And part of that is you have to have a cross connection, which we do have plumbing records that we can help the homeowner when they first call in, kind of help them understand how their plumbing in their home works. And again, we don't necessarily always have that information. They would have to sometimes provide that, have a plumber come in, confirm, what's going on in the basement. So we know that new homes, like for example, in the northwest end of the city, they're built to a different building code standard than previous homes. So we know that those homes do not have cross connections with their sanitary lines. They have sump pumps built into their homes originally, so they're certainly not eligible, and we have that information available. So that's part of the staff time that goes into this, is when people do call in. And a good example is last September 22nd and 23rd, we had 2 days of very, very heavy rain, and we were inundated for a couple of days with people calling in that they had backups in their house. And pretty much 95% of them, once we looked at their plumbing record and the age of the house and that sort of thing, we said, well, we're pretty sure that you have a cross connection, you have no sump installed, and your line just couldn't handle all that rainwater coming in from your weeping tile and your sanitary line, so it backed up. And all these people, we did mention the subsidy program too, and it was a very small percentage of people that actually took it up. So part of this also is, an initiative and a proactive initiative from the cities, with an increased amount, it might entice people to actually pursue it as well, right? So sorry, that's a bit of a roundabout explanation, but to get an actual number, we know the ones that have been done. We should be able to tell the homes that aren't eligible, and it just takes a bit of digging sometimes in the archives to find out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Kathy, go ahead.
So do we have an indication of like the age of the homes or the era of homes that would have that cross connection, or was it sort of spread out over a long period? of time?
I don't know the exact time that the building code changed. My house in Stratford was built in the late 70s, and I have a cross connection. So I could find out a more specific date for you, and I would maybe have to speak with the building department to see when that actually changed, that you cannot build a home with this connection. That being said, for a number of years, for decades even, when we do a road reconstruction, the city always brings a storm line up to property line for people to connect to. So for example, all the homes on Huron Street that are being redone, they likely don't have a storm connection. So we would be bringing one up for them to connect to down the road if they wanted to, right? So so that is a standard now. I could find it. I don't know the exact date of when that would have switched over, but
Yeah, I was just curious that if anybody's listening in, you know, if you have a general like era of home, you could probably look into it. But
yeah.
Okay, I actually have a couple of questions too. Is there, do the plumbers in town know about this program? I'm just curious if they would have knowledge about it as well.
Yeah, so there's actually a couple of companies in town that when these applications do come through, we see that plumbing company is consistently on it. So we know that they're going in, and it's a benefit to them too, right? Like they're getting paid, they're getting more work out of it, which is great. It's helping the local plumbers as well. And then the homeowners are offsetting their costs, right? So there are certain companies that are aware of it, but that's part of why we also wanted to bring this up now is I do want to do a little more social awareness with this to make people, because a lot of people just don't know the subsidy exists, right? It's been in place for so long and it hasn't been, you know, spotlighted at all. So that's part of what I want to do too, is maybe with communications with Mike Bites is how can we, you know, relay this information so people are aware of it, and, you know, there'll be an increase in some staff time required, people calling in, wondering what it is and that sort of thing, which is totally fine. And hopefully it does increase it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And it's in the end, it's a benefit to both the homeowner and the city, really.
Yeah, it really cuts back your potential to have a backup, especially if you have an older home.
Right.
And like I said, that example from September was a good example. The dozens and dozens of homes that called in that had backups, and a lot of them likely didn't do anything about it. And it could be for one reason or another. It's some of it you will have to pay out of pocket, but the subsidy does cover a significant amount depending on what your home is like. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Gaffney.
As Chair of Finance, I guess I want to ask, it says in your report that it's been several years since you've used up the $30,000 from year to year. Does that then go into a reserve fund? Because if we reintroduce this program to the community again, there may be a rush on getting it done, and up to $3,000 a house. It won't take long to go through 30,000.
Correct. And I believe it does go, the Director of Infrastructure could maybe confirm this, but I do believe it goes back into water reserves that doesn't get used. So just to, and actually it's 8,000, I think is what it said in the report of the 30,000 that we budgeted for this year. We're actually up to 11,000. We had a recent person this week that updated as well. So, but a lot of people just do like the backflow preventer, which is $675. So it really just depends. And yeah, and if we do have an influx this year, then we should be able to cover that with the water reserves. But
okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have someone who'd like to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Vasilakos. All in favor? Any opposed? Nope. Okay, great. On to item 5, which is a report of the Manager of Public Works. 5.1 is the Blue Block services. And is Mr. Ryan here? Great. So maybe you can speak to that for us. Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Hi, everyone. So this report outlines the upcoming changes to the producer responsibility system for our Blue Box system. It also speaks to our preferred approach for the transition period between May 2024 and December 2025. We're requesting that the CAO be authorized to negotiate any contract agreement that may come up with CMO, as the potential for the timing it could come into effect during the restricted acts period. So that's the reason for us requesting permission of the CAO to negotiate that.
Okay, does anyone have any questions about this item? I found it a little complicated myself, but it makes sense and it's great that we're saving some money. Dave, go ahead.
I'll move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks. All in favor? Okay, thank you, and that carries. Back to item 6, or yep, 6.1 is the overnight parking strategy. And I think Mr. Bantock is going to speak to that.
Yes, thank you. So through the chair, the purpose of this report is to provide a follow-up on a resolution that came from the Finance and Labor Relations Committee in the meeting in October last year that referred to staff the development of an overnight parking strategy. So the strategy itself incorporates 3 main areas of focus for improving overnight parking in the city: enhanced relationship with Stratford Police, enhanced education campaign, and a review of the set fines and offenses. So with the first being the relationship with Stratford Police, staff recognize the important role that they play in helping us enforce overnight parking, given that the current offenses for parking between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. when parking enforcement staff are not available. So to improve this relationship, we also brought in the city's Public Works Division, recognizing that they often have difficulty with snow clearing and snow removal when vehicles are parked on the street. So to take a more proactive approach, we've been working with them to identify significant snowfall events, and then having Stratford Police blitz enforcement leading up to those events. So it will help discourage overnight parking when those snow clearing activities need to be undertaken. We've also been working to create better communication back and forth and using a tracking tool to assist in monitoring areas of concern and identifying where tickets have been issued in the past. So the second piece of this being the education campaign. So we undertook this this past winter. It was a kind of monthly communication setup where we had multiple posts going out across Facebook, Twitter, the town crier, radio, city's website, as well as physical posters at town facilities. This was kind of just a campaign undertaken to help push out awareness and advise of upcoming of not being able to park overnight. And we also had specific posts actually as well to advise of upcoming significant snowfall events and reminders not to be parked on the street overnight. And then lastly, during our review of our current set fines and bylaw offenses, we identified the use in other municipalities of an offense, which is actually for interfering with snow removal or winter maintenance activities. So not having increased set fines in quite some time for most of our parking offenses, we also consulted a survey of municipal parking fines that was done by the Ontario Transit Commission Parking Committee. And we noted that Stratford actually had one of the lowest set fines for overnight parking. So as a result, and to further deter overnight parking, a new offense to the traffic and parking bylaw is being recommended to include no parking in a manner that obstructs municipal snow clearing operations. It's also being recommended that this new offense, along with the no parking between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., carry a $60 voluntary payment within 7 days and an $80 set fine. If this is approved by council, staff would then prepare an application to the Ministry of the Attorney General to have these charge changes finalized. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Bantock? Dave, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. snowplows having a problem. I understand that in other municipalities they have the ability to declare a snow emergency, so that if during the day snow removal operations have to take place, that they don't allow parking. I don't know if it's in certain areas, maybe in residential areas or whatever. Do we have something like that, or would we be interested in something like that? And I see the directors popped in.
Yeah, through the chair, and I'll let Adam correct me if I get this wrong, but the declared state of emergency is more to alleviate staff from our minimum maintenance standards in terms of snow operations. So we normally have set times to clear snow, and that basically just extends our obligations. In other municipalities, they've delegated the option of towing to various staff. So it's just a matter of, I think in this case, we're permitted through police or through bylaw officers to tow vehicles, but none of them are public works staff. So that would be the gap there in terms of how you might be able to arrange for that.
But it's something we could include in this bylaw, or is it something that has to be further investigated?
Through the chair, I would refer to the report writer, Mr. Bantock. This is his report.
Through the chair. So as the director mentioned, that is something that does take place in some other municipalities. It is something that could be included. I think the approach for right now was focusing on the overnight parking, and that being that concern and a part of the strategy. I think what we could do, having implemented this strategy, is kind of see how this works over this upcoming winter, and then perhaps revisit this next year if it's still a concern.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Kathy.
I had a question from a citizen where people were parking, like say a recreational vehicle or a vehicle on the street sort of for an entire week or a week or two, and it wasn't winter, it's summer. So they, citizens can still sort of flag overnight parking in the non-winter seasons, and there's still that $60 plus if $80 if they wait too long. That still can actually happen. Like if they contact the clerk's division, then that can be passed along to the police for overnight parking as well. Is that correct? Like I know winter is our biggest operational challenge, but we do want cars off the streets in the summer as well, right? Overnight.
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. So yeah, while there is a kind of emphasis on the winter and the impact to public works, the new set fine for overnight parking would be year round. It would just be that new offense with the connected to the winter maintenance activities that would be obviously during the winter.
Thank you. I actually had a question as well. If we're collecting data along with the police of areas of concern, was there any thought given to adding signage to those places? Like, because I, as far as education goes, I don't think anything really beats a sign that says you can't park here overnight. And that I think would help people remember that those are areas. So, I mean, especially if we're collecting more fines, maybe there's somewhere it could be worked in there that we could add some signage. Is that a possibility?
Through the chair, it's something we can certainly look at. I know just having implemented kind of the tracking last year, we'll kind of see where we get some more repeat areas. The only concern with that is just because obviously the no parking is on all streets. Putting it on some streets and not others can raise concerns from those where we choose not to put it. And I would say there's also concern with sign clutter in terms of putting up too many signs. So it's certainly a balance, but something we can look at as we kind of move forward with this.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of thinking of a sign that says, no parking overnight on any city streets between 2 and like making it a very general sort of, hey, you can't do this anywhere. But this is a spot where we see it a lot. So Dave, go ahead.
Yes, just in response to that, we do have signs, and I couldn't swear that they're at all the entrances to the city, but they are at some of them that says no parking on any street between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. So as I say, I'm not sure it's at all of them, but it's at some of them. But we can complete that night. And I've spent a lot of my time when I was on the Parks Board resisting signs, because signs just turn into sign pollution and more signs on the streets. So that's I get. And the other question I wanted to ask, I'm sorry, Kathy. Would there be any value in maybe discussing not making the fine, and I may have missed this in the report, not making the fine just for regular overnight parking violations so high so quickly? I can see in the wintertime when our plow operators have a job to do, and it's a lot easier for them to do it without cars on the road. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, I guess, for discussion or any thoughts on that. Not making it 60 and 80 for just regular overnight parking. So, thanks.
Kathy, did you have a response?
Oh, I mean, other than a response that the 60 and 80 puts a sort of average with other municipalities. And I would say that anything less than that, people simply, it needs to hurt enough for people to not to do it. And so, you know, and I think aligning what it is fine. I had a question around the fact that, so this 60 and 80 is for that overnight parking. So it's specific only to the overnight parking and not specific to any sort of illegal parking around the city. What are, just as it remind me, what are the fines for parking illegally? For example, parking on a bike lane, parking illegally in a spot that's signed no parking. What are the fees for those again? Because ideally, the fine for overnight parking should be similar to those as well.
I see Mr. Bentuck looking for the answers.
Yes, and my apologies. I should have thought of this ahead of time, but it just occurred to me now. So yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, I was just pulling up the list here. I believe it's 20 early and 30 set for the illegal. And what was the other one that you mentioned?
Well, illegally parking either on a bike lane or in a posted location. So whichever, yes. I would think.
I believe that's for both the 20 and the 30.
And parking in the intersection, which drives me crazy on my street. People park in the intersection all the time. So
if I may, once we actually have a motion and vote for this, I would like I'd like to make a referral for those other ones as well. But we'll deal with this one first. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, through the chair, I would say that just because we are in a municipal election, that's kind of the focus of the clerk's office at this time, but we do have an intent. It is our intent next year to fulsomely look at all of the parking fines. So we will be, as our plan anyways, to undertake a more fulsome review of all the fines, just because it has been quite some time that any of them have been updated.
Yeah, and I would suspect that if we found we were out of line with a lot of municipalities on the overnight one, we probably are with some of the others as well. I won't make the referral if it's already part of your work plan to do, and maybe we can just capture that in the minutes, and that way it's there. Thank you.
Great. Dave, go ahead.
And I will make the motion on the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Great. So item 7 is department update. So Mr. Crinklau, would you like to give us some of the greatest hits of that list?
Yeah, it's a big one. Sure, some highlights. I guess some people will be glad to hear that we'll be going to tender shortly for the Romeo pedestrian crossing. So that's underway. what else we got here? In terms of environmental services, in response to some of the frustrations that St. Mary's been dealing with earlier this spring and ongoing with some deteriorated pipe due to hydrogen sulfide issues, we've decided to proactively investigate several of our more likely or potential spots to have such issues through a small CCTV program. So that's just started up recently. Patchwork, asphalt patchwork potholes remains to be proceeding throughout the city. As part of the follow-up for the Canada Day event, we have received 215 surveys to date, just a bit of a reflection on people's thoughts and opinions on how well the Canada Day event went and recommendations, that kind of thing. That closes July 31st, and then we'll have a report come to council discussing how we like to proceed for such events going forward. The climate change program manager position, the posting got closed today, and several applicants are applied. So hopefully we'll have that position filled in not too long. And the last thing I'll just mention here, Invest Stratford just asked me to include the attainable housing special project. So this list is provided by the CEO, Joni Gerber. And just some highlights I think I'll just mention is that they've hired a project manager for facilitating aspects of the community improvement plan, as well as the general toolkit that looks to be developed. And that is being done by Carolyn Baker, a local planner, as well as they look to begin public stakeholder consultation online and in person starting in September. So that program or initiative is well underway. I believe that's my update. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Does anyone have questions? Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Redford Crescent, I was talking to a resident there on the weekend, and he asked me about if the hydro seeding that's been done, if that is the end of it, or are they coming back to do it with some grass seed? Or like, you know, it's not the right stuff, is what I'm led to believe.
Yeah, so through the chair, I haven't had an update recently from the project manager for that project. However, we did do some preemptive pre-seeding outside the contract earlier this year to help kickstart growth for seed in that area, and attempts to make up for less than desirable product that was provided years past. If there's ongoing issues, I mean, that will have to be addressed on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
I had a comment, or somebody, one of my neighbors actually approached me. We live very close to Huron, and yeah, there's been a lot of traffic diverted onto our residential street. So there's some concern with speeding. So I think you probably have heard from maybe at least one person about this, and I'm just curious as to some thoughts on what we might be able to do about it. I know it's sort of a temporary situation because traffic is being rerouted, but it could also lead to people deciding that this is a great shortcut from now on that they might want to use. So just curious if there's any thoughts on what could possibly be done to address that.
Yeah, through the chair. Not too many complaints have made it my way, although I'm sure the project manager for the file has received more communication from residents in the area. It's definitely one of those difficult things to deal with because any action I might take on your street might push more traffic onto the street beside it. We have discussed and looked into alternatives such as speed humps, which we haven't done in the past, though we're currently trying to acquire as a potential consideration, but that's one of those things where it might divert to a different street. And they also have their own issues of creating increased speeds in between speed hump locations, as well as noise issues and other frustrations in terms of maintenance. So it's one of those difficult things to deal with. But when we do get residents call in with their frustrations, we try to do what we can. I know for that area, we do have some speed informational signs being set up hopefully shortly. And then if there is a recognized speeding problem, we request that police go out and do some enforcement when they have time. That's kind of the position that we're in at this point. But if there are considerations that we can look into, we'll look into it for sure. The one thing I will note for Huron Street is very shortly it'll be open to two lanes, I think, for the full direction. So in the next couple of weeks, and that will definitely alleviate some of the diverted traffic off Huron Street. So
Great. Thank you. Yeah, just a quick question about the speed humps. Would they be sort of a temporary one that you could remove and put in different spots? Is that the idea?
Yeah, through the chair. So unfortunately, I don't anticipate receiving any material this year. Already our suppliers indicate delays for this as we're trying to find out the right kind of product to have in place for such streets. But the idea is the temporary solution. We haven't really done that in the past, and we want to get a feel for what the implications are maintaining or using those type of products. So something to consider in the future.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, so next we have item 8 is the advisory committee and outside board minutes for your information. And the next subcommittee meeting will be on August 24th at 4:30 p.m. So I guess all we need is item 10, adjournment. Kathy's moving that, and all in favor? Great, thanks very much, everyone.